In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the 2025 tornado season forecast, which areas you'll be seeing the most tornadoes as we go through the months, and my prediction on how active this season will be. Before we get into this, make sure to go down below and hit that subscribe button and hit that thumbs up button as well. Now, looking at the current CDAS Nino 3.4 index, this is showing you the current graph of La Nina, El Nino, and neutral. You typically see neutral conditions when it is in between 0.5 and 0, which we did see a slight neutral status November 23rd, but we've since gone down into a deep La Nina INSO status since that neutral peak. Now we are expected to continue with that La Nina from February to April 2025. That is a 59% chance we see a La Nina. And then with a transition to INSO neutral likely during March through May of 2025. So this is going to be a La Nina neutral spring tornado season that the Climate Prediction Center is expecting. And just to put that into perspective, this is an El Nino versus a La Nina tornado season, and these boxes are areas of tornado activity. Now, during a tornado season with El Nino, we've seen a decrease in tornadoes, not a huge decrease, but more of an average year with an El Nino spring, with those bluer colors being below average tornado activity through the years. But with a La Nina, you can see here, we have a big red blob, and those deeper reds indicate some much more above average tornado activity in those areas during a La Nina storm season. Now, again, we typically see a neutral status around summertime. So this is pretty much indicating during only the springtime from March to June. From June to October, we typically see a neutral status, which neutral status brings tornadoes no matter what. Like last year, we saw a crazy tornado season, and we were going from an El Nino to a neutral. So really anything that can happen, but this is what we've seen in the past from El Nino and La Ninas. Now, taking a look at average tornadoes by month, and starting off in January, you typically see a low amount of tornadoes in January, as well as February, only about 40 tornadoes in February. Once you get to March, and this could vary by year, this is just averages, we typically see an uptick in tornadoes in March. Some years this could be way higher, and some years this could be way lower. But typically in April, May, June is when we see those peak tornado months. Most of these tornadoes in March being down there in the south, which we call Dixie Alley. July, August, and September, you do see a medium amount of tornadoes. In October, November, we sometimes see some tornado outbreaks happen in the northern Midwest, in the Midwestern region sometimes. And then again, you typically see a low amount of tornadoes in December, with occasional storm setups in the winter. Now, here's the INSO phase with the highest annual tornado average is going to be EF1 plus tornadoes. So this is a little confusing, but down here you can see we have moderate plus El Nino. With an El Nino, you typically see a lot more tornadoes down here in Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, pretty much your 3 tornado alley states. South Dakota up there as well. Nebraska is kind of near average, as well as those northern states of Minnesota, Wisconsin. Again, you typically don't see a lot of tornadoes up over here in the west, but again, it's still possible. But this is during an El Nino. You typically see some more tornadoes actually during El Nino in Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri. This is from, again, averages from 1973 to 2015. Weather is changing, so keep that in mind. But during a moderate, so stronger La Nina, we typically see a lot more tornadoes down here in the southeast, with most of those being Dixie Alley, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, also seeing more tornadoes during La Nina, which we saw a very strong La Nina this year over here in the Northeast. Again, doesn't typically see a lot of tornadoes, but sometimes you do get a few setups where you could see a couple of tornado outbreaks over there in the Northeast, typically around June or July. But something interesting to look at with El Nino and La Ninas. relating to tornado season. Now, getting into my personal forecast, this is for March, and this is where you're most likely to see tornadoes during the month of March. And typically in March, you do see most of those tornadoes happening down here in the Dixie Alley region, and that spans from eastern Texas to over to the Carolinas, and that's what we call Dixie Alley, because when you see these winter storms in March, these we have some typically warmer temperatures in March across the southeast, and those winter storms bring a cold front with a warm front in a low pressure system, and that brings tornado outbreaks down here in the south in the month of March and as well as early April. Now, that pink is going to be, again, most likely area to see tornadoes. This white is going to see that medium chance to see tornadoes, so that expands out a little more. And then I actually have this a little more northward, because sometimes we do see March setups over here, typically in mid to late March. Sometimes over in Missouri, Iowa, Illinois, sometimes we see some tornado outbreaks around that time with any heat wave that comes down here in the Midwest. We sometimes see those tornado outbreaks. And then we have that possible tornado region. Again, very unlikely, but again, some of these areas could have some storms which could produce a tornado or two during the month of March. Going down to April, you can see this expands a lot, and this continues over much of the Dixie Alley area, but this goes way westward as we get into Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. Throughout this pink area, we are most likely to see tornadoes, and then that white area expands much more northward, where again April is one of those prime tornado months, so tornadoes are pretty much possible anywhere with the warm air and moisture really starting to come up from the Gulf of Mexico. So your most likely area is going to be again down here in the Dixie Alley, going over to Tornado Alley, and much more northward with those states like Iowa, Illinois, Nebraska, Wisconsin possibly. You're going to see more likely tornadoes just expanding across the central United States. Now, going over to May, this continues to expand. Once we get to May, that southeastern threat for tornadoes definitely diminishes a lot, but it's still going to be there. For May, a lot of these tornadoes are going to be westward in the Central Plains. Texas is always in tornado season, but that pink area is again going northward, where you're most likely to see tornadoes, especially in the summer. Over here in the North Central Plains, you typically see a lot of tornadoes up there in the summer. This white area heads a little more eastward, as you can see, as we see some tornado outbreaks sometimes over there in the Ohio Valley. You could see even possibly for tornadoes over here in the Rocky Mountains as well sometimes. So again, that pink and white area is where you're most likely to see tornadoes for May. The red area is just areas where you could possibly see tornadoes, and anywhere that's blank is extremely unlikely to see tornadoes this year, but it's still possible. We've seen a tornado in every U.S. state. And finally, this map is going to be from June to August, as you pretty much see the same areas see tornadoes from June to August. Again, that pink area being the most likely area to see tornadoes. This spans from Oklahoma and Texas up there to Minnesota and the Dakotas, and you just see a lot of tornadoes up here in the North Central Plains across those summer months. And that white area again continues. You're going to see tornadoes in the summertime, especially across much of the Midwest and Texas. And a lot of this red area, especially Florida, I kind of forgot to highlight Florida, but again, you're going to see a much increased chance for tornadoes in Florida and the Gulf Coast during hurricane season. Now, my final prediction for this season of the 2025 tornado season, I expect 1,500 to 1,650 tornadoes this season. We saw 1,780 tornadoes last season. I expect that to be that number to be a little bit lower, as that tornado season was definitely up there in the charts. So I expect around that range of tornadoes. Of course, it could be less, it could be more. And then last year we saw around 137 EF2 plus tornadoes, and I'm expecting this year to see around 120. So nearly the same numbers last year, but again, a little bit less. I still expect this year to be a big tornado year with that coming out of the La Nina heading into the neutral status. Again, it doesn't matter if La Nina or El Nino, any tornado season could be big, but we've seen some of the bigger tornado seasons be La Nina. If you did enjoy the video, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button down below. Share this video with any friends or family, and leave a comment down below on which months you typically see the most tornadoes in your state. But as always, I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe.